In the heart of Phoenix, Arizona, billionaire entrepreneur Ethan Cross walked into a small local dealership, a place he hadn't visited in over a decade. The polished floors and the smell of new leather felt unfamiliar, almost surreal, compared to the towering glass offices he was used to. Ethan wasn't there to buy a car, he was here for a potential partnership deal that could expand his tech empire into the Southwest. Yet, as he crossed the showroom, his eyes scanned the space with casual detachment, unaware that the encounter waiting for him would upend everything he believed about his past. The moment Ethan entered, a strange sensation gripped him, his steps faltered, and his pulse quickened. Behind the counter stood a young saleswoman, arranging papers with meticulous care. Something about her caught him off guard immediately, though he couldn't place it at first. It wasn't her uniform or the professional poise, no, it was in the details, the hazel eyes that seemed familiar, the nervous but genuine smile, and the small, instinctive gesture of tucking her hair behind her ear. Memories long buried surged to the surface, dragging with them a weight Ethan hadn't felt in years. He froze in place, staring, almost unwilling to breathe. The woman, Maya Gray, looked at him with polite curiosity, unaware of the storm raging in his mind. Ethan's voice came out quieter than he intended. "Have we met before?" he asked, almost more to himself than to her. Maya paused, her hand hovering midair, papers forgotten. There was a flicker of recognition in her eyes, though she masked it quickly. "No, sir, but my mom once worked for a man named Ethan Cross," she said softly, her words deliberate yet trembling, as if aware of the emotional gravity behind the name. The air around Ethan seemed to thicken, pressing down on him with sudden intensity. Clara, his long-lost fiancée, had worked for him years ago before vanishing without a trace into the vast desert reservations. He remembered the shock, the heartbreak, and the unanswered questions that had haunted him ever since. His voice cracked despite his efforts to maintain control. "What was your mother's name?" he asked, each syllable weighted with a decade of longing and regret. Maya's eyes dropped, and for a fleeting second, time seemed to pause. "Clara Gray," she whispered. Ethan's heart nearly stopped. His world tilted on its axis. The woman he thought had abandoned him, leaving only silence in her wake, had not only survived but had raised a daughter in secret. His daughter. The realization struck him like lightning, bringing with it a mixture of awe, guilt, and the desperate urge to make up for lost years. Memories of Clara, of laughter shared in the sunlit halls of his office, and promises that had remained unfulfilled flooded him. He wanted to reach out, to touch her face, but all he could do was stare in stunned disbelief. Before Ethan could gather his thoughts, Maya's phone buzzed insistently. She glanced at the screen, her expression shifting from composed to panicked. "I have to go," she said hurriedly, her voice trembling. "My uncle is missing, he went hunting and hasn't returned for days." Without waiting for a response, she gathered her things and left, leaving Ethan alone with a whirlwind of emotions and a gnawing sense of responsibility. That night, Ethan lay awake in his penthouse, the city lights shimmering below. Something deep inside him whispered that he had to find her uncle, and perhaps, in doing so, begin to reclaim the family he never knew he had. 4 days later, Ethan found himself driving through the vast, sun-scorched expanse of the New Mexico desert. The heat shimmered off the road, making the horizon blur like a mirage. He had been restless since the encounter with Maya. Unable to shake the feeling that something, or someone, needed his help. His SUV moved steadily over the dusty terrain, the wind whipping through the open windows. Then, in the distance, he noticed a tiny shape lying near a cluster of cacti. At first, he thought it might be an animal, but as he approached, his heart dropped. The figure was a child, a young Apache boy, no older than 7, trembling violently under the scorching sun. His clothes were torn and caked with dirt, and his tiny chest rose and fell with shallow, uneven breaths. Ethan's chest tightened. He quickly stepped out, fear and compassion warring in his mind. The boy whispered something in his native tongue, words Ethan couldn't understand, yet their desperation was unmistakable. Without hesitation, Ethan scooped him up, wrapping him in his jacket to shield him from the heat, and raced toward the nearest reservation clinic, praying they could save the child. At the clinic, the doctors acted swiftly. They examined the boy, offering water, food, and medical care. Ethan hovered at the edge of the room, helpless yet determined. The doctors explained that the child had likely been wandering alone for days, lost during a violent desert storm that had scattered the local hunting parties. He had survived only through sheer will, his small frame showing the strain of hunger and exposure. Ethan's hands clenched. The boy reminded him painfully of the innocence that could be so easily endangered, and Ethan silently vowed that he would do everything possible to keep him safe. As the hours passed, Ethan refused to leave the boy's side. He whispered words of comfort, encouraged the child to eat, and even held his hand when the boy's exhaustion overcame him. Slowly, life began to return to the small boy's body, the color returning to his cheeks and the spark to his wide, wary eyes. Ethan felt a mix of relief and something deeper, an unspoken bond forming between them. In saving this child, he realized how fragile life could be, and how moments of pure courage and compassion could change destinies in ways no one could predict. That night, Ethan returned to his ranch house, still carrying the weight of the day's events. He sat in the quiet of his study, staring out at the desert under a sky sprinkled with stars. Then, without warning, there was a knock at the door. He opened it to find three Apache women, their expressions serious, their eyes filled with authority and sorrow. One stepped forward, her gaze steady yet gentle. "You saved one of our children," she said softly, voice edged with emotion, "but the child you abandoned years ago was also one of ours." Ethan froze, every word piercing him like a sudden storm. Behind them stood Maya, her eyes glistening with tears, reflecting the moonlight. The realization hit him with full force. The child he had rescued, the woman who had startled him in Phoenix, and the stories of the past, they were all connected. Everything that had been lost, everything that had seemed impossible, had been guiding him to this exact moment. In that quiet, tense instant, Ethan understood that fate had not only reunited him with a forgotten love but had also returned him to a family he never knew he had, a family waiting for him all along. He stepped forward slowly, his voice choked yet resolute. I don't know where to begin," he whispered. The women exchanged glances but did not turn away. Maya reached out, her hand resting on his arm, bridging the gap between past and present. Ethan looked down at the child, then at the three women, and felt an overwhelming mix of gratitude, awe, and responsibility. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to hope. Hope that the mistakes of the past could be forgiven, that love could be rekindled, and that a new chapter, together, could begin in the desert that had brought them all home.